Marion by Leah Rowan is a modern-day twist on the old classic movie Psycho. It reinvents the story with a twist of the knife. Okay, so there's this woman, she works for like this ad agency. Her and her boss, David, they end up having this client that comes in and he wants to work with them, but he wants to pay cash and keep it kind of like hush hush under the radar. After the client like goes down the hall to use the bathroom or whatever, David's like, I want you to take this cash. I want you to go deposit it in my account. We're gonna break out of here. We're gonna go out on my own. I want you to be my like art director or whatever. And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, you know that Gustav's never gonna promote you, this, that, and the other. And she's like, what the F? She's like, okay. With all intents, she does plan to go to the bank to deposit this $100,000 that they have received from this guy. Okay, so also her sister has been staying with her because her husband had hit her in the face. Apparently this has been going on for quite some time. And the main character is like, I'll be out of work soon. She just had to go to that last meeting. We'll do this for the evening, don't go back there. And she gets home. The sister has left. She went back to the abusive husband. And she's like, what the F? She's trying to like message her sister. Her sister won't answer the phone and she's getting really worried. And she's like, what if he's hurt her even worse? And who knows what happens? So like her brain starts, wheels are spinning. She's super worried about that. So first she's got to go deposit this $100,000, right? So she does go to the bank to do this, but they're like, you are not the owner of the account. You can't do that. We haven't done this for years. And she's in New York and it's very nerve-wracking and she's very nervous to have all this money on her. And she's like, I also need to go and see if my sister's okay. So she doesn't have a car. So she ends up taking the bus and heading towards where her sister lives, has the money on her in a bag. And then she starts thinking about, well, maybe this money could be used to help my sister get out from under her husband and get away from him. Because her sister owns a business, but she took out a ton of loans from her husband. So he kind of owns her. And she will lose her business because she owes him a bunch of money because he helped her out when, it wasn't doing so great in the beginning. So she's kind of like tied to him monetarily. And so this money would also be a big help for her to get out of this horrible relationship. And so the sister really loves her sister and she's really thinking about possibly just doing that, which is very stupid because you're going to probably get caught. What are you doing? On the way to where her sister lives, the bus that she's taking breaks down and she ends up in this town called New Paltz. She has to find a place to stay for the night. All the local hotels in the area seem to be booked up. And so she ends up at one that's a little off the beaten path and back down a winding road that's called the Billings Motel. There's the innkeeper there is named Norm. And he seems really nice. He's kind of attractive. And so she's going to stay there for the night. In the morning, she's going to go and get to her sister. And she's still trying to call her sister. No answer. Nothing's going on. And, she didn't get to eat. She's kind of hungry. And Norm's like, hey, I'm having some food up at the house. If you want to come up and have dinner with me, or you could just grab it and take it back to your room, whatever. He's like, if you feel weird, don't have to. So she ends up going there. She ends up like actually sitting and having a nice dinner with him. He seems very nice and charming. So far, no weirdnesses and whatnot. Outside of, his mother's very sick. She's in one of the rooms. There's a lot of like noises and air conditioners running and stuff. And so she doesn't think too much of it. It just seems like, oh, he seems very concerned for his mom because she's ill. Anyway, so she goes back to her room and then she's like, all right, I need to take a shower, get ready for bed. She gets in the shower and then like she hears a noise. And then, oh, hey, here comes Norm with, like, a knife. And now he's got this, like, hateful look in his eyes. And, okay, so, well, instead of, Norm getting the best of her, she knees him in the balls. And she grabs a knife and she stabs him to death. Okay, so now she's murdered somebody. But he was going to murder her. But then she's kind of like, I don't know if I can call the cops because I couldn't stop stabbing him. And I stabbed him a lot. And they're probably not going to be like, that was self-defense, because of how many times she ended up stabbing him. So we have that. So now she has to figure out how to deal with this. And like, in her life, her mother had always instilled in her, never be dependent on a man, always be, financially stable, don't let them hurt you, fight with however you can, because her mom worked in a women's shelter and she just saw these women return time and time again to these men who eventually would end up killing them or really hurting them really badly. And their stories did not end very well. So she's always instilled in her daughters. And what's really upsetting is the fact that her sister has put herself in a situation where her husband is abusive and beats her. We have our character Marion Cage, which is not her real name. She just kind of made that name up on the fly, and she's got to figure out what to do. And so she has an idea where she can toss the body, but she's like, okay, I got to clean up all this blood and get everything. How am I going to get the body out of there? And no one else is like at this motel because it doesn't really seem like anyone stays there. Norm had been talking about how they needed to do renovations, that they were probably going to do that soon. And then eventually it hits her that, oh my God, there's this sick mother. I've just left this mother abandoned without a son, even though he was going to try to murder me. And then like stuff gets weird and escalates. And so when I first started reading it, at first I was like, this is all right, But the more I got into it, the more like compelling the story gets and the more effed up. And there's some twists. It was really well written. It's a great thriller, interesting like take on the story of Psycho. Also just being in horrible relationships, how it never retracts, it escalates and it gets worse and worse, especially if you allow it to continue. So I thought it was really well done. It's super effed up. Like, it's a page turner. I'd say once you get past the first like maybe 50 pages, like that's when it really pulled me in, because at first I was like, this is gonna be another run-of-the-mill thriller, but I feel like it wasn't. I thought it was pretty great, bloody, effed up, weird read. And there's also too, so you have the story of Marion and what's going on with her and what she's trying to do with the body and figure all this out. Her sister and getting to her sister to help her sister. But you also have this other story of this like detective girl who's looking into this other woman who is missing, this Emily Stockton. Is Emily Stockton Marion? I don't know. You'll have to read it to find out. And so the detective girl too, she has to worry about, like, she's kind of slight and she looks very young. And so she has to watch out for people when she's trying to do her detective work alone. And as she tries to figure out what's happening and what occurred. And she ends up kind of figuring it out, whereas the police believe other things. They go for like the easiest explanation of whatever. And so what happens when she finds out? Does she actually figure out that Marion did this, or what do they come to the conclusion of? So that added an extra layer and like element to it that I thought was pretty good. If you like horror and thrillers, Marion was pretty great. And I would say check it out if any of that sounds good to you. Also, if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.